So what was your first reaction watching this tape after 22 years?
I mainly remember being, feeling like, feeling horrible that day. Waking up and it was still like drunk from the night before. And it's like, oh no.
So you'd all had a bit of German hospitality the night before the show happened?
Yes.
4 oompa bands going on simultaneously in 4 corners of this aircraft hangar-sized
Huge
tent, right? Beer hall.
That's right.
They sent over drinks to our table by the dozens. They'd send
Trays
over
of
a tray
the apple
with like
schnapps.
25 schnapps on it, and everybody'd be like, okay.
We weren't
you
allowed
know.
to drink less
We were
than
supposed
3.
to drink them while they were watching us or something, the people that sent it over. So we had to drink them. We had no choice.
Well, it was like that the whole first European tour, because they didn't really know who the Cars were, and their first record was just out there, and
Oh, was it? It wasn't like Best Friend's Girl wasn't a hit yet in England or any of that stuff. Picture discs and all that stuff that we had.
No, in England they knew
It
who
was a
we
hit
were.
in England.
But I think in the other countries,
But we got a bad rap in England because of our
It's
picture
that
disc.
picture disc.
yeah.
Yeah, because we put out a picture disc and they thought that was like too American.
They thought we fiddled the chart.
Plus, Elektra was caught, like, stocking the stores
That
or
report.
that report to the trade magazines to try to elevate the
thought
numbers,
we were fiddling
which
the
they do
charts.
with every record at the time, but they, unhappily, they just happened to get caught doing it on our record. We didn't know,
Yeah, we just went there and then all of a sudden we were bad
yeah, they hated us before we even got there.
in England. I think that was mostly because I think our management really didn't book us in Europe because we were too busy in the United States.
Do you remember?
I don't think we ever, decided we didn't want to go to Europe.
Yeah,
We always just said, we never have time. Because we did manage to get to Japan and, places,
We would like to have
other
gone.
places, but we just
back.
never,
We went back for promotional purposes, but not to play concert. Remember when we went to?
yeah, and they didn't like that.
And I remember you had a whole book of lyrics stolen outside Dingwalls. We went to a club one night to see a band, and out of the back of a limo or whatever, you had a lyric book stolen.
My bag was stolen.
Your whole bag, shoulder bag.
There was 1,000 songs in there and they're all gone. No, actually, I don't
Didn't
even
they
remember what lyrics
recover-
were in there, but
did they recover
I
something?
think they got the bag, but
No, but nothing else.
somebody stupidly kept the lyrics.
And they also put it in Melody Maker and stuff, and then made fun of it. I won't even mention. Remember what they said about it? They said something like, "Who would want to steal these lyrics from this band?" or something like that. 'Cause
Paul Weller reviewed our single.
They didn't like us.
He was in the Jam at the time, and he said you can melt it and make an ashtray out of it. That was his review.
They accused us of being like a stadium band or something.
They were real suspicious of us.
Yeah.
And we.
They didn't like the American New Wave band coming there and upsetting the Sex Pistols.
We played like a student union at like Oxford University or somewhere, and these little kids were like giving us the finger and like, like we weren't cool enough for them or something, and it was just weird. David wasn't usually green when we played.
Yeah. Or not that green.
Yeah, David was pretty sick.
I
Because
thought we
actually he
just
was he was laying on the table before we went out and played the gig. We were just wondering.
I was passed out in
Put you
the
on a
in
gurney,
the
didn't
car. Huh?
They put you on a gurney, didn't they?
Yeah, there was a cot. They put me in a car and drove me to where the music lounge thing was, and then woke me up and said, "Okay, it's time to go on." And I was like, "Okay, okay." And I went out there and I played the show in a complete daze, and then went back to this cot, and then they woke me up and put me in the car and took me away. And I didn't remember anything about being there at all, except that I was blue, green.
Same thing with me. First time we went to England to make the record, I got real sick.
It's like food poisoning.
Food poisoning, dysentery or something.
Yeah, I think when we started the tour, we were doing bars and things, and then at the end of the tour, we were probably almost headlining, or were we headlining?
Some and some opening.
Yeah, the tour was 9 months or 10 months.
Yeah.
You know, the tour got bigger, the gigs got bigger.
We kept asking our manager if we made it yet, but we never got an answer. So I don't know if we have yet.
Yeah, I don't think we have. Because we never heard.
We're not sure if we made it.
We were just touring a lot, after that first album, and it was kind of, the record like actually took off kind of slow, which was kind of nice, but it was added, radio stations like sporadically. It wasn't like everybody played the single and then it was mayhem. It was kind of like Texas played the single, and then a couple months later Chicago jumped on it, and then so in the first part of it, it was kind of like took about a year, and I think the more it got popular, like the touring, people were saying we were opening for people, and then it sort of started to change, and then people were opening for us, and we just kind of I think we decided then we were also going to try to have local bands open for us.
Of course, it would depend on, most artists would be having an album that they were promoting, so, there'd be a certain bunch of groups that were available to do a tour, but we'd have a pick among them.
And in some states, we would just use the bands from the city if we could find out who they were.
Yeah. Who were some of the people that you had?
As opening acts? Yeah. Nick Lowe and Paul Carrick.
The Motels.
Bram Tchaikovsky.
Wang Chung.
Nick Gilda.
Oh, right.
Nick Gilda.
And also, on sections of tours, somebody would come for like 5 gigs or something. XTC opened
XTC
for
was
us.
for a couple of weeks, or
Mm-hmm.
and Suicide on a couple of different occasions.
Yeah, Suicide.
There was that week at the Paradise.
And 4 nights at the Universal Amphitheater. That's the one I'll never forget, man.
No, that was cool.
They were throwing stuff, and he's going, you suck just like your Dodgers. And they were just getting even madder and throwing ashtrays and full cups of beer at him and lit cigarettes.
So wasn't that the gig where they came off stage saying, "Yeah, we killed them, we did great"? Because they had played longer than they had ever played with us at that gig. That was the thing. They played for 20 minutes, I think.
More of their set than they ever got to play.
They said, the audience loved us. We had them in the palm of our hand.
Craig, do you remember when they played the Paradise? You and me would climb up every night up into the rafters and watch the show and watch the whole audience, because it was always a spectacle. Like, you didn't know what was going to happen, if the guy was going to get beat up, or
Who's
how
got that?
long it was going to.
Speaking of footage
didn't
and
wanna
stuff,
miss
do you have
it.
that footage of Suicide playing in complete darkness, except for like a spot on Alan's face, and all of a sudden drinks come into the light, and fists and bottles and stuff come in, and he bounce off his face?
Yeah, and he's got the big red mark on his face from smacking himself with the mic.
So let's go back in the history. You've all been in different bands before this. I mean, Modern Lovers, Milkwood, Martin Mull, Ben, you'd been on TV. I mean, did this all give you ideas about what you did and didn't want to do on stage by the time you got to the Cars?
I suppose so, because everything before it was all a learning experience. So you get your act together over the years, and we pretty much knew what we were going to be. We had discussions from time to time.
Yeah. Plus, a lot of us were in bands before, in the same band before the Cars, really. Because
That's right. Well, I was in Richard and the Rabbits with Rick and Ben, the year before Captain Swing.
That's when I heard you guys was Richard and the Rabbits.
Richard and the Rabbits. Yeah.
Three had that.
Boy, we had some
First
brilliant
Greg.
names for bands.
Richard and the Rabbits was before Okasik and Orr.
I remember that.
A couple of gigs. Yeah.
That record company
That
thing
was
where Foghat-
Okasik and Orr at the Idler and stuff was after Richard and the Rabbits, though, I thought.
Oh, yeah.
I think
It was probably
after.
before and after.
Well, I know that I went with a friend who was answered an ad in the Boston Phoenix to be a sound man, and it was a press party at a roller skating rink, the Ballaroo roller rink. Was that the name of it?
Don was the guy. The name of it, Don Liberty.
No. Yeah. And I just remember being struck by the fact that they were playing songs. In the local bands at that time, there were a lot of boogie bands and a lot of just sort of, just riff rock stuff. And what struck me and what really impressed me was that they were playing pop songs and stuff. And I distinctly remember having an opinion on it and watching the guitar playing, going, he's okay, but I wouldn't mind being part of this. I actually had that thought, and after that the band broke up, and I think Greg went and played with Martin Mull for a while, an Orphan, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I started sitting in with Rick and Ben. They were just playing with an acoustic guitar and a bass and singing some of Rick's songs and some cover songs, I remember Ace How Long and a couple other things, right? And I just started bringing my guitar down, and that developed into Captain Swing, right? And which evolved into the Cars. To make a short story long.
Yeah. Also, Rick and Ben were playing a place called the Speakeasy in Central Square when I was in the Modern Lovers. You mentioned it, but then I found like a program of nights that we played, and you guys played like Wednesdays or something, right?
Oh yeah, we used to play alternative nights.
So basically, it was just the Boston scene, and people meeting each other and checking each other out, and you get a couple of guys from one band, a couple another. You think you look for the combination that you think is going to work best, and that's how we evolved.
I think we were all in our own world. I don't even think we paid attention. We knew that there was a lot of bands playing at the Rat, so we thought, oh yeah, it'd be a good place to play because they take new bands. And maybe some stood out. I always when I first came to Boston in '72, I saw the Modern Lovers. It was the first band I ever saw, and I saw them on the Common.
You did?
Yeah, and that was the second day I was in town.
Oh.
And I lived in Somerville, so I walked to the Common, and you guys were playing, and I thought, wow, this city's great. look at this stuff that's going on in the Common.
Then it didn't really pick up until later, a few years later.
But anyway, basically, I don't think we really didn't pay attention to much of that.
But it was a good climate because
other
the
bands.
audiences were really receptive to all the different kinds of bands that were playing, and the bands were all friends. So that really helped us too.
In the sense, we played our first gig on New Year's Eve, right? So that was, and we made our record in the winter. So we played for that whole year and got signed somewhere along the line. And didn't we just come home just before Christmas from making the record at Air? Yeah, December. So it was,
No, it was February.
Yeah, it was February.
okay, so it was just after.
Yeah, making the first record was February of '78.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
So just about a year.
Came out in June of '78.
During the blizzard of
We
'78.
played Harvard.
That's right, we were there during the blizzard.
So you did, before the record, you had airplay in Boston just from demo tapes with a lot of the same songs that were hits, which probably was even harder to do then than it is now. So how did that come about?
Well, we had an ally and a friend at BCN, the Maxan was a DJ there, and she was like one of those people who like to go out and see bands, which is something radio stations probably should be doing, but don't ever do it anymore. And she actually scouted around, and she kind of just liked the band. She liked a prior version of it. She even liked Captain Swing.
Yeah.
She was playing demos from Captain Swing, too.
She saw us at the Newberry Street Fair.
Yeah.
Or one of those street fairs.
So, it was actually her who kind of picked, what song to play on the radio, and she played it on her show. I mean, she picked just what I needed to play, I guess.
Yeah.
On her own. She had a couple of songs. I think she had You're All I Got Tonight, too.
That was the other one, yeah.
And maybe All Mixed Up or something.
She had us in heavy rotation.
But she did play. She played that all the time. And then the other DJ started playing it as well. Just what I needed. And then that's obviously when the record companies came.
It was getting reported in the tip
Yeah,
sheets.
that's what it was. It got reported on all the tip sheets as tape. And hardly any stations anywhere in the country had anything on a tape on their playlist.
Like the Gavin Report or Friday Morning Quarterback, and there'd be a column, what label, playing, Aerosmith, Columbia, Elton John, MCA, whatever it was, and saying Cars, tape.
We played a lot of songs, so we probably had, I don't even know how many we have, but we must have had 20 or 30 songs, and, because we had to fill up. Sometimes we had to play, more than one set in the club. So we just had to have a lot of songs. And we just had all kinds of them. But I mean, there were songs that the audience responded to more than others. And that might have been one of them, for sure. But I certainly don't think anybody.
I don't know. I remember hearing that one because I was like the last one to join the band, and I remember hearing Just What I Needed, thinking, first time I heard it, thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. It's got something sort of unique about it, and it's nice and concise, and fairly short pop song format, right to the. So I still remember hearing that one for the first time.
I think it was pretty casual, between Ben and I, because we had been playing together for forever. I mean, since we were 18. You know, so like, and we played lots of things together, you know, from Cleveland, Detroit, all these cities. And we just like, when we played songs, we just went, oh, you sing this, I'll sing that. Oh, you sing this. Wasn't any big deal. You know, although I did keep in mind that if it needed to have a good voice, it should be Ben. I definitely thought, well, maybe this is a song that has a lot of melody and it needs a good voice, so Ben should sing this one.
We'd talk about it for about a minute or two and decide that he's suited
Sometimes
best
at
for
rehearsal, he'd sing it or I'd sing it, and we just go, oh yeah, you sing it. You know, we just decide after one sing, you know.
Were there a lot of songs that got lost from the early years? And did you ever play any cover tunes live?
We
We
played,
played
a
a
batch
couple,
of cover.
couple cover tunes
early
in the
on.
beginning.
We did it again by the Soft Machine.
Oh yeah.
But that was the end of
We did it.
of You Really Got Me by the Kinks.
And Don't Worry, Baby. And Love is the Drug.
Oh yeah.
I'm on
Give me-
Fire.
I forgot about that one.
Dwight Twilley.
Give Me Some Kind of Sign.
Give me some
by
kind of
Brendan Wood,
sign.
like a Roxy Music
Yeah.
version of it.
Yeah.
What else?
Wow.
Another-
I'm Waiting for the Man. I think we might have played a few times. There were a couple of songs. I mean, for the most part, our songs, I would try to stay to the nice, concise solos, and you know, just would always feel like they were part, you know, like little compositions within the songs, and so I wouldn't stray too far. But there were a couple of songs like Dangerous Type and You're All I've Got Tonight and Take What You Want, where there were some open areas where I could cue the band back in, and we, you know, go back into the song proper. And so there were some little, you know, some spots in the live show where we could stretch it out a little bit.
Greg you played guitar on
that's
that one,
right.
right?
That's right.
That's
Are you
right.
playing
I guess it-
saxophone on this performance at all? I can't remember. No?
Or what, on the music line?
Yeah.
Is there any saxophone? I don't know.
Oh, that's too bad.
Mixed up.
I
or
can't
something,
remember.
maybe? Did you used to whip out the sax?
Like from time to time, but I don't know. about
And you
it.
got to do your multiple percussion showcase on I'm in Touch
On
with
I'm
Your
in Touch
World.
with Your World. That was always one of my favorite
The
ones to play
ratchet
live.
Vibra
We're
slap.
getting, yes.
Looks like a lot of coordination. I had to go like pulling out all these different things and just getting the right cue. Yeah.
Plus, I figured it'd be fun for people to watch visually. Uh-oh, is he going to make it? Oops, he didn't make it.
Are there a lot of other lost songs like that you would play that never made it to the records for whatever reason?
I don't know about a lot, but there's some. There's probably some. Sometimes you forget.
Some of them are on the Rhino anthology.
There's a couple, yeah.
A lot of stuff that we recorded in demo forms or may have started for the record. And
There were some on the deluxe version of the first album, and a handful of things that were recorded that have yet to be released.
I think we did have some of the songs already because when we played live, we played some new songs. So I bet you there was probably at least half of the songs on Candia that were already done. And then because of, you know, just the energy of the band, it was kind of easy to write a lot more, you know, or just having the energy, you know, during the spirit and everything from those times, you know, it doesn't take, you know, a particularly long time to write songs. It just takes a particular time to do it, like if you're in the mood. I think, you know, usually it just takes, you know, maybe a month or two to write, you know, 25 songs. If you're in the spirit of doing it, you can just keep writing, you know. It's just being in the spirit. And I think after the tour and everything, for the first record, I just think everybody was kind of dying to do new stuff. And I was kind of really dying to write too, because you sort of kept away from it, you know, when you're touring and stuff. So it was motivating to do it, you know. We didn't have time to think about like following it up or living up to the next, you know. I think we were just swept up and going forward, you know. And we also, in a way, I don't really think we, you know, I think maybe we were one of them too, but you know, some bands, we like to have singles, and we were surprised that we had them, but we weren't actually, I mean, sometimes, you know, sometimes people get embarrassed by their singles, you know, And maybe as a new band, I know for me it was like a shock to have a single, and I thought, well, geez, you know, I don't know if I ever wanted a single, but and then we got singles, and you know, you just keep writing, but you don't write like, you don't try to write a single or anything.
It's a good way to get real tired of a song that you used to love.
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah. Then, because it's familiar to you as well. Like when you're playing songs live, and the singles come up that you're going to play, it feels funny because you feel like you're playing a cover.
Yeah, this is that song that we play.
Yeah, this is a cover song we're playing. It's kind of funny.
The first album cover was designed by the record company. We had no input, I would say, into that, right?
Our cover was actually the inside sleeve.
I forgot.
The sleeve that David did, that was it. But it
Yeah.
had like some bondage stuff on it and some crazy stuff, so they didn't want to do that.
They didn't like it, no. Also, we were a new group. So
And they didn't even tell us
they
they
didn't want to
change
give
it.
us.
It just sort of came out.
Yeah,
It's
they
a
didn't want to
different
really
cover.
give us a break because we were a new group. But me and Jerome Higgins had designed a very different album cover that cost $80 to design. I remember the price exactly. It was completely finished and everything, but it was a little more bizarre than the cover that they had in mind. So they changed some of it because of copyright problems and put it in as the inner sleeve. But I think that was way more how we envisioned who we were back
Because there was
then.
stuff from the day the Earth stood still.
Yeah, there was stuff we couldn't get clearance on.
Klaatu, Michael Rennie,
Yeah,
right?
and we quickly like rephotographed some of the stuff and put it in there. I thought that when the electric cover came out, it was like way too slick. The pictures of us I didn't like, and I don't know how
Big
everybody
gaping
felt
maw of
about
a
it,
mouth.
but yeah,
You know, we would do these appearances at record stores where we'd sign autographs and get behind a table and people would buy the record and file by, and man, I got tired of that cover.
Which one?
The first album, that big grinning face.
What about the sperm-colored steering wheel?
Yeah, that I didn't get tired of. That I like the steering
I like
wheel.
that, too.
But that big red lipstick mouth. I mean, I remember like blacking out teeth in it and just like.
But you know what? The cover did really well, didn't it? Didn't it get an award or something?
that cover.
The first album cover.
I think I heard something about that.
It was like actually, well, everybody liked it. Kids,
Well, people liked it,
people
definitely.
liked
Yeah.
it. But
Didn't you think it was kind of slick though?
oh yeah,
for
it
what
was
we
weird.
thought we were then.
You know what it was? Their promotion departments at the big labels weren't really ready for a band like us, and we didn't fit into any of their compartments. We weren't Jackson Browne, and we weren't, a lot of the other Electro Asylum artists. We weren't Joni Mitchell or whoever. We had our own thing, and we were East Coast, and distinctively East Coast, I'd say, compared to a lot of the acts. And I don't think they really, they just did the best they could trying to understand where we were coming from. But
That was definitely a West Coast cover too, I think.
yeah,
in my mind.
and it was just.
They actually even used the exact same technique for the photograph on the back for another one of their groups a few months later,
Yeah.
called Creed. The exact same photograph almost. Not the
with
Creed that's out
telephone
now.
pole thing?
Yes, exactly the same thing. Also, this was at a time when lots of groups did like do-it-yourself album covers and stuff. Punk bands everywhere did all their own stuff, but none of them were on major labels or anything.
But they did start a trend of having a woman on the cover of our records, which carried through to quite a few of them.
I don't think we ever thought we were any kind of punk band.
I think it was New Wave is what they started to call it.
I mean, we didn't.
Definitely not punk.
No.
No. We used to think punk. The word was silly, kind of, because it was like punks.
Punk was like the Sex Pistols and Susie and the Banshees or something.
Yeah.
That's what we thought, anyway.
We were caught up in the energy of it, in the sense that we played some of the same clubs that so-called punk bands played. We played the Rathskeller in Boston. We played CBGB's once, but I personally always took pride in the fact that we didn't get lumped in with all those bands. It's like whenever they talk about that era, they'll say, they say the Ramones, Mink DeVille, Blondie, Talking Heads, whatever. And I'm glad that we're not like part of some easy to define category. It's like when you say San Francisco rock and you go Janis Joplin, the Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane. But we never were. I don't think we fell easily into a journalistic category that was just easy to define. I mean, they called anything that came out that year new wave. You know, I mean, I don't know what that meant or anything. We'd all been playing music a long time and just playing the way we play. We just wanted to keep making music. We didn't, there was no plan. I remember being in England making the first record and some of us having the conversation, just, gotta hope this thing sells enough so that we can make another one, because this was fun. You know, we liked doing it. And if it had sold 100,000 or something, or however many we would have needed to recoup enough to do it again, would have been enough, I think, for most of us. That's all. We were just looking to make records.
I think we kind of figured it would at least do well around Boston, because we had already been getting the airplay. Anything else was like a happy surprise.
And some people thought we were an English band, didn't they?
Yeah, a lot of people thought we were an English band.
Still do.
Yeah, totally. People come up to me now and say, "Oh, you're from England, right?" And I go, "Yeah."
New England.
Yeah, New England.
So on the records, there were a lot of sounds, and I see on the tape you got them all, pretty much got them all on stage. How challenging was that? Did you have to use a lot of gadgetry?
For the first record, it was pretty much, I mean, it was pretty easy. It was, you know, Amon Touch, you know, had to grab this and grab that. But it wasn't really that hard to do, like, all the keyboard parts until, like, Heartbeat City, where, like, there was, like, sort of so layered, it just not enough hands, and started using sequencers and stuff a lot. But
We'd also, I mean, like, we layered a lot of background vocals and things, I think, in the studio that might have been technologically difficult to reproduce at that time. Yeah. That was always a little point with us. Chris, our first producer, Roy Thomas Baker, who had done, you know, Bohemian Rhapsody and these grandiose records, and he was really into big vocals, and we were turned on to it. You know, we liked the sound of it. It sounded great when you heard all those voices played back, but there's no way, you know, 4 or 5 guys can, you know, reproduce that on
We
on
can't sing
stage.
72 tracks of vocals.
No, and there wasn't no such thing as samplers. We weren't into like flying stuff artificially in, so we never had tapes or anything on stage. So
I
we
just remember when we did Good Times Roll in the studio in England, the first record, and when we heard back the vocals, I told Roy that I thought it was way, way too much. I said, "Well, Roy, that's like way too much. That just sounds like so many." But, you know, it grew on me later, and it sounded so smooth. It was a nice process to do it, because Roy, you know, was fortunate enough to have like a 40-track machine, which in the day of 24-track, he had his own special machine. So he could do layering of vocals a lot. We spent probably more time layering vocals on the first album than anything else. Oh, yeah. Because it only took 12 days to make. And I think half the time was probably just layering the vocals.
I did all my guitar parts in a day and a half.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And we just did the
distinctly.
basics, you know, like, because we were pretty
just really ill.
good from live. But that shocked me, those big voices.
4 guys singing one part, you double it like 4 times. So that's like the equivalent of about 16 voices, just like on the first harmony. Then you do the same thing with the second and third. So you got like a whole gang of guys singing in there.
Some of the effects that are on the first album are really long drum effects. They sound like keyboards. There's a lot of them that people have always thought were keyboards. But you could get this like 3-minute delay on all these really weird, mostly sort of outer space kind of sounds. You can hear them at the ends and beginnings of songs and stuff. So you had to program that sound, if you could find it again, into the drum machine, and then if anybody bumped the equipment or like turned a knob, you'd go to hit a sound that was supposed to last like 3 minutes and it would end in about 5 seconds. And you have to try to like figure out where it went. Yeah, like where it went. It was just like knobs everywhere and foot switches everywhere.
Back in the good old days.
Yes. And it was steam powered.
Remember in Live Aid, they were all triggered involuntarily? We were playing in front of 2 billion people, and out in the hot sun, those, you know, electronic drums started, and Ben singing, "Who's gonna drive you home?" And I hear, beedle-leedle-leedle-leedle-leedle, doom, doom, and all this stuff just going off, man, going out live in satellite. Do you remember that?
So we always loved all the latest electronic stuff and tried to go out and find whatever we could use.
Yeah. We liked the technology.
For drummers, they didn't have a lot of stuff for a long time. But usually we would send out our tech guy, and he would just come back with a bunch of stuff he thought I might like and would plug all kinds of things in and see what they did.
We even got to get some things from Roland when we were in Japan that weren't out for America yet. We brought some of the first TR-808 drum machines back. I remember everybody bought one. And
Did we get those in Japan?
Well, we ordered them at least. You know, we saw them for the first time. In Japan, there was a Roland representative.
Yep,
I
the
remember.
TR-808 is not
We
like
got
the
to see,
workhorse
you know,
of
the future of you
yeah.
know, what the next year of music
Yeah.
technology was coming. And so we some of that stuff we got early on. Greg got the Prophet synthesizer very early on, right? And
Synthesized bass.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah, you had pedals too.
Yeah, what happened to those pedals? I forgot about those pedals. The super subsonic pedals you had.
Meachon Octavider.
Ah,
Oh, yes.
Octavider.
Had to have it. We used that and all mixed up.
It's gotten miniaturized, but then you needed one box just to do slapback echo, where now you got a little thing this big that'll do 8 simultaneous effects and be controlled by your feet. Then, you know, we had big racks of stuff. You'd have to drag along whatever made the sound in the studio, basically, that created it. There weren't a lot of little pedals that did that stuff then. It was just coming on. You know, I've got that chorus pedal, and that was a big part of my sound in the early stuff, the Roland chorus. I was just thinking how when Captain Swing played Max's Kansas City for all the big management companies, and one of the comments that we got were that we didn't look unified. You know, one guy looked like he should be in the Grateful Dead, and one guy looked like he should be in the Velvet Underground, and one guy looked like this or that. And I think, you know, that was one of the criticisms, is that we were too musically and image-wise all over the map, right? Yeah. And I think we took some of that to heart, and I think that also had an influence on our making an attempt to try to develop some kind of unified image to put forward. I think it's always kind of a little weird to see someone else's perception of you, because you probably, you know, you see yourself so differently, and to like make a record and just like put it out there, and it goes from this personal thing to something that like anybody can comment on or take home and listen to and have an opinion on. And sometimes it's a little hard to relate to, because you just you're just working on stuff and making music, art, whatever, and it's tough to, it sometimes feels funny to see how you're viewed by other people.
Ben, did you think of yourself as the sexy one?
Oh, hell no. Randy maybe, but not the sexy one.
The amazing Randy.
Sven Harlander, there you go. No. I've always kept my one foot on the ground. It's just a show, act, and then you leave the stage and you're somebody else. But nobody else sees that, except these guys and the crew. And that was terrifying.
I think we liked being separated from the music business. It's kind of cool to be separated from the music business, you know, be up there. And we kind of got our own thing going up there, you know, once we got, excuse me, the studio going, and, you know, we had sort of our clubhouse, you know, our studio, and we hung there all the time, and, you know, we just liked it. And we also thought it was probably one of the best music scenes in the country. Radio was still supportive, and, you know.
Yeah, all the musicians, you know, were happy about the scene that was going on, but it actually garnered enough attention so that there'd be articles in like Newsweek or something about it being like a hot spot, and there was a lot of people looking at Boston at that time for maybe a 3-year period, coming to town, signing all the groups
It's like what
up
happened
and
in
stuff.
Seattle a few years ago. It was almost that kind
Yeah.
of thing, right? Like Boston was a hot town for a minute.
And of course, it had a tradition before that of being a good place for musicians to come to anyway, you know, with folk scene and jazz scene and stuff.
Student population that would
Yep.
support new music and always looking for new music. And we were able to at least eke out a modest living playing in this band even before we ever got a record deal. I mean, it was only, you know, a couple $100 a month maybe, but we were able to exist playing our own songs, which was probably unheard of in a lot of places in the country. You could never, you'd have to be playing just top 40 just to exist. And so Boston was good that way.
Plus, when bands came through town, they would always find their way to that studio to visit some of them.
It was a good place, like we brought Iggy Pop back after his show. It was a good place to come back after like someone's show at the Paradise or something, and we'd go back and listen to tapes or hang out and have a little party or whatever. And it was a good way to host musicians that we liked, and we had a place that we could invite them to and hang out with them. And
Also, it was the first, I think, the first recording studio I'd ever set foot in years before with the Modern Lovers.
We bought a studio, and then we just like gave it all away to people. And
we made it our clubhouse.
it was basically a clubhouse that we just financed.
We tried to have people manage it, but I think we thought that bands would kind of like coming up to Boston instead of New York or LA just for a break and just for a place where they wouldn't be under the microscope so much. And we had hoped that more major national acts would come and make records there, but I think that's down to management, probably, or just the way the place was managed. But it was fun having our own studio.
Yeah, it was fun working on it too. We worked with the designers and everything, gutted the building and put all
John
beautiful
Storick.
interiors in it. And it was really nice.
We didn't want to do anything fake. Like we didn't want to come out and say the same thing every night or have like, the show opens with, Greg saying a piece, and then we go into this song, and then Ben moves from here to here, and we do this. We never wanted to do do that because it didn't feel right.
We felt it was sort of show busy.
Yeah, we didn't want
Where
to
they
be
make
show
you
business.
clap, and it's just totally obvious and stuff.
We even took it a step further. We hosted the Midnight Special, and we had absolutely no talking whatsoever, even in introducing the bands. It's the only Midnight Special that you'll ever see that doesn't have Wolfman Jack going, oh, it was just like a computer printout at the bottom of the screen saying, and now here's a band you'll enjoy, M singing pop music or whatever it was, or Robert Fripp, and the entire night there wasn't one word said. I mean, I think that was one of the ultimate versions of that.
Remember how it came about? We actually didn't want to do it because we didn't like the show and think too much of the show.
We thought it was
so
corny.
we thought we would make demands that they could never
See
give
how
us.
much you can get away
so we
with.
said, yeah, if we can have anybody we want on, and we don't have on the actual host of the show, we'll do it. And they said, oh yeah, we'll do that. So we were stuck doing the show. So we thought, well, let's make the best of it. So we
So we had
made
Iggy
a
on,
good
and we
show.
had like all these bands we liked.
Lena Lovitch,
Yeah.
Suicide in front of
Robert
millions and
Fripp.
millions of American viewers.
the records were on live with us.
Yeah.
And Wolfman was nowhere in sight, because we'd always seen that show, and like they'd always break for a commercial with him with his arm around like the singer, and they'd make the wolf call, and we'll be right back. And there was no way this band was going to do that stuff. So we just devised a way to make it work for us, and it was just this like, there's a new scene in music, and tonight's an evening of something you might not have seen before, and it was kind of cool, It was,
And I think everybody liked it. I think the
For
producers
mainstream
of the
TV, it
show
was a pretty cool
liked
thing.
it and everything, but they just went right back to the regular format.
oh yeah, the next week was back to
And didn't even mention
Casey and the
anything that
Sunshine Band,
happened.
whatever.
But it was done naively. We just didn't, none of us were like, doing acrobats, and none of us like had that kind of fake show presence.
Yeah, and also we never said we're not going to talk either.
No, we
It
didn't.
just felt like that's what we
But
should
we got
be
to
doing.
rep as that. We never said, all right, New York, we
people
never
can-
did that stuff, It just never felt like it went with the music, really.
But we got complaints and stuff from critics that we didn't do it.
Always.
We just figured
They said we were cold and didn't like welcome the people like we should.
Right, like we didn't give them the, because we didn't do that Pavlovian thing, that they all go to a show to expect, It was we asked a little more of the audience, perhaps.
We didn't have any mob psychology going on.
It was just, music.
I basically live a lot at night because I happen to be one of those nocturnal, people who stay up all night, go to bed at 4 and wake up at 12, And I just think there's mystery in the night, and lots of different kinds of thinking goes on at night, and it's just a more mysterious time. And people, I guess so, night crawls into the songs, because maybe I don't like day. that much. And but you know, I can't really think of a song that I actually based on a particular person. Anyway, you know, most songs, like I might have said once before, they're sort of like, they can be autobiographical, but they're also fiction, you know. But they sort of like you were talking about the book the other day by Michael Crichton, you know, how he takes like scientific facts, but he makes it into a science fiction novel. So maybe I take some like, you know, specific situations and then turn them into a fictitious thing. Well, the women would have to be made up, because I certainly didn't, you know, carouse, like, you know, I didn't have women hanging off my arm all the time, you know. But, you know, maybe it's just, they're kind of, maybe they were fantasy things, you know, maybe they were, you know, they weren't based on real personal experiences on a nightly basis, you know, but maybe they were just things I thought people would think, or wondered how people got themselves in a particular situation, and I also thought a lot of them were comic in a way.
You can have a healthy libido without actually acting out.
Yeah. I thought they were kind of somewhere. I mean, I wouldn't say a song like Drive was comic, but, you know, but some of them had, to me, they were comic.
Well, that's, you know, that's the other thing, though. We had sort of our own humor in the band that maybe, like, we weren't perceived as a funny band particularly, but we laughed a lot and had a lot of jokes. And I think there's probably things in the songs that we know, like I'm on top of my nerves, or little lines that, you know, we know where they come from, but nobody else would, you know. And so it's probably just like any band, you know, develops a lexicon, you know, of their own. And,
Well, we had a good one going.
oh, yeah. You know, it was a very funny band, believe it or not.
It's funny, when people come up to you and it affects so many people, then I have to kind of say, well, you know, if you like it, I'm not going to destroy your dream. You know, but you know, it's like, I mean, I guess as an artist, you got to, you know, think about like, well, I don't know if you have to think about it, but basically, you know, you're kind of laying something out, and it's kind of, it feels a little vulnerable, you know. You're pretty vulnerable, really, because your lyrics are kind of what you think, you know. I mean, I think I also hide in them, you know. I think there's some stuff hidden. I think you hide behind them a little bit. I mean, maybe sometimes, you know, twisting the stuff around is like a puzzle that I can understand, you know. It's like a thing that, and I think the band too, you know, kind of like, they understand like the twisted words, or maybe they understand something about the mood of it, you know. But and sometimes, you know, you can say what you want, but you can also like kind of you know, twist it a little bit so that it can have other meanings, and you know, and that's what I would like to do, you know. I like to leave it kind of open for interpretation. That's why sometimes in interviews people want to know the exact meaning of something. And I think, well, there's no real exact meaning, you know. It's kind of a good, you know, you can interpret a meaning that you're welcome to keep and have, and I'll agree with you. Candio, it's funny, I never knew anyone Candio. Did I? I don't think so.
You never told me about it.
Did I? Yeah. It's like, you know, something you say that's kind of like feels good to say. Like when you're rocking along or something, and you just, something just comes out of your mouth. You know?
Scans good.
It sounds like, you know, hey, it feels like, okay, that's kind of cool. You know, as long as you don't censor yourself too much, you know, you can come up with things like Candio.
I think the thing I'm proudest of is that we're a band that you hear a few seconds of it and you know what band it is. And that we're actually a band that mattered a little bit to people and made some kind of contribution that added and just moved the thing along a little bit. And, you know, I'm very proud of that. I'm proud of the music we made. I'm proud of these guys.
Just the music itself, you know, has the fact that it's like lasted this long, And when you occasionally, you know, you get the occasional person who comes up to you and says, "Oh yeah, you know, I used to love the Cars," you know, people in other bands, sometimes that's neat, you know, when you hear like younger bands say, "Oh, you know, used to listen to the Cars and they influenced me," and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Well, I like the fact that we were a good pop band, and I thought we had, you know, some integrity about it. I think we cared about like the, you know, commercial side and the art side. We tried to make it interesting, you know, both ways. And I think while we were, you know, when we were in the Cars, we were pretty focused on like what we thought was good music, you know, besides our own. And we would try to, you know, lift that up a little bit too. You know, we would go to radio stations and play, you know, other people's records that we liked and that we thought were like new on the scene. And we tried to promote like, you know, kind of music and art together, you know. And, you know, we were a band that I thought like also, you know, for years and years, you know, loved each other and had a good time. And, you know, so it was proud of it was a positive experience, you know.
Enjoying the music that we played and still having it recognized by the kids of, you know, the kids of the kids that used to be at the concerts. Good camaraderie. Glad we're all friends and lived through all that for about 10 years apiece. Mm-hmm. It's been great fun. Proud to do that. Great people. About it.
For me, the test is to put on the CDs now and listen to them, and they sound better to me than they ever did. And I'm amazed at how good everybody separately has impressed me when I listen to them now. You know, I always think of us as a band, but now it's easier to listen to Elliot's guitar playing separately like I had never heard it. And they're all just incredible. You know, they're amazing.